Part 1: The Photographer's Secret. Behind the locked mahogany doors of Boston's richest families, there were secrets worth killing for. And in the winter of 1887, a photographer named Edgar Hartwell walked straight into one of the darkest. What he thought would be just another portrait of the dead, became the evidence of murder. So before we dive into this chilling tale of wealth, betrayal, and survival in Victorian Boston, make sure to subscribe to our channel and let us know in the comments what state you're listening from. Now, let's step back into the gaslit streets of 1887, and discover how one man with a camera uncovered a nightmare. The streets of Boston, 1887. The city of Boston was alive with contradictions. On one hand, it was the pride of New England, gas lamps glowing on cobblestone streets, carriages clattering past tall brick townhouses, and Beacon Hill standing as a crown of aristocracy. On the other hand, it was a place of whispers, scandal, and shadows long enough to hide 100 sins. Here, families like the Pembertons had ruled for generations. Their names appeared in the society pages, their fortunes controlled banks, railroads, and mills. But their greatest wealth wasn't gold or land, it was reputation. They would do anything to keep their family name untarnished. And it was into this world that Edgar Hartwell stepped, carrying a camera that would change his life forever. Edgar Hartwell, the photographer of the dead. Hartwell wasn't just any photographer. He was a memento mori specialist, a man who took photographs of the dead. In the 1800s, this wasn't unusual. Death was everywhere. Children, mothers, fathers, disease and accident claimed lives daily. And for grieving families, one final portrait of their loved one was often the only image they'd ever have. Hartwell had built his reputation on these delicate memorials. His studio on Washington Street was a place of velvet curtains, chemical trays, and the sharp scent of silver nitrate. His hands were stained from years of working with developer solutions, his eyes trained to notice details most people missed. The wealthy trusted him. Why? Because he was discreet. He didn't gossip. He didn't question. He simply delivered a final memory, polished, dignified, eternal. But one cold February morning, a telegram changed everything. The Pemberton Commission. The telegram was sealed in dark blue wax, stamped with the Pemberton crest. It read simply, Cornelius Pemberton deceased. Family requests immediate memorial photography. Highest compensation assured. Urgent attention required. Hartwell froze as he read the name. Cornelius Pemberton wasn't just wealthy, he was one of the most powerful men in Massachusetts. Railroads, shipping lines, textile mills, his empire was worth millions in today's money. His mansion on Beacon Hill was practically a fortress of wealth. Marble staircases, chandeliers from Vienna, servants moving like ghosts in hallways lined with European art. For Hartwell, this was more than a job. Photographing the Pemberton patriarch meant recognition, prestige, and a fortune in future commissions. But it also meant stepping into the private world of Boston's most feared family. He packed his gear carefully. The large format camera with its brass fittings, glass plates wrapped in felt, bottles of developer and fixer sealed with wax, and his portable lighting kit. Then, pulling his coat tight against the February wind, he set out for Beacon Hill. The mansion on Beacon Hill. The journey took him past the harbor, where steamships belched smoke into the gray sky, and up into the maze of cobblestone streets where old money lived. By the time he reached the Pemberton mansion, the light was fading and gas lamps flickered to life. The house loomed like something out of a Gothic novel, 4 stories of polished brownstone, its purple-paned windows watching like cold eyes. Inside, everything gleamed. Polished mahogany floors, rugs from Persia, chandeliers that scattered rainbows across silk wallpaper. Servants moved silently through the halls, their faces pale with something that looked less like grief, and more like fear. Hartwell was led up the grand staircase, past oil portraits of stern ancestors, and into a room draped in heavy curtains. The smell of lilies was overpowering. And there, lying in state on a carved oak bed, was Cornelius Pemberton. The first photograph. Hartwell had seen death countless times. He had photographed children stilled by scarlet fever, young brides taken by consumption, and sailors drowned at sea. But Cornelius Pemberton was different. Even in death, the old man's presence filled the room. His jaw was square, his hands large and weathered from a lifetime of command. Hartwell adjusted his camera, arranged the lighting, and prepared the first exposure. As the plate developed, shapes swam into focus: the still face of Cornelius, the folded hands, the painted calm of funeral makeup. But something was wrong. The details no one saw. At first it was just a shadow on the plate. Hartwell blinked, leaned closer. His experienced eye caught details others might miss. The fingernails. Dark marks. Not dirt. Not accident. Bite marks. The skin on the hands. Faint scratches, carefully powdered over. Defensive wounds. And most unsettling of all, the expression. Cornelius's mouth wasn't peaceful. His lips twisted ever so slightly. His eyes, though closed, seemed to hold a final, frozen knowledge. This was not the face of a man who died quietly. This was the face of someone who knew exactly who had killed him. Hartwell's chest tightened. He looked up. The family stood in the shadows of the room, silent, watching. Their faces unreadable. He suddenly understood the danger. This was no ordinary death. This was murder. And by photographing it, he had just made himself a witness. To be continued. That night would mark the beginning of Edgar Hartwell's nightmare, a photographer trapped between truth and survival, hunted through the gaslit streets of Boston by a family who would do anything to protect their fortune. And this is just the beginning. Join us in part 2 as we uncover the chilling history of the Pemberton dynasty, the cracks in their perfect facade, and the deadly secrets that forced Edgar Hartwell to risk everything. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments where you're listening from. Because trust me, you won't want to face Boston's Beacon Hill alone. Right finger. This comes to around 1,000 words and is fully tailored for American YouTube horror, history audiences. Simple language, vivid atmosphere, clear pacing, suspenseful ending, and a call to action. Do you want me to continue writing all 10 parts in this exact style, so you can upload them as a series, or would you like me to first send you outlines of all 10 parts so you can approve the flow before I expand them? Part 2. Shadows in the Mansion. Hook. Gas lamps flickered against the February fog, their light trembling like watchful eyes on the frozen streets of Boston. Inside the towering Pemberton mansion, death had drawn the curtains tight, and wealth itself seemed to press down on the air. Edgar Hartwell, camera case in hand, stepped into the grand home of one of Boston's most powerful families, and immediately felt something was very wrong. If you're just joining this story, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. And let us know in the comments where you're listening from. Now, let's return to 1887, and walk with Hartwell through those heavy oak doors. The mansion on Beacon Hill. The Pemberton home rose like a fortress against the gray February sky. 4 stories of dark brownstone, framed in granite blocks, loomed over the street. Iron railings guarded the steps, twisted into patterns of intricate scrollwork. A brass nameplate by the heavy oak door gleamed, quietly declaring, Pemberton Residence. Hartwell knocked, his breath a white mist in the bitter cold. The sound echoed deep inside the house. Moments later, footsteps approached. The door opened to reveal the butler, Wilhelm Krauss. A thin, pale man with silver hair and trembling hands, Krauss carried himself with the precision of long service. His German accent had been polished almost away, but not entirely. Mr. Hartwell, I presume, Krauss said, bowing slightly. The family is distraught, as you can imagine. They are gathered in the morning room. Mr. Pemberton rests upstairs, prepared for your photographs. First impressions. Hartwell removed his coat, his eyes sweeping the grand entryway. The house was rich, yes, but something about it felt oppressive. Heavy curtains smothered the windows. Gaslight burned in crystal fixtures, throwing restless shadows across walls draped in burgundy silk. And beneath the perfume of flowers and the faint scent of cologne, Hartwell detected something sharper. Metallic, chemical. His experience told him it was the after-smell of embalming fluid, barely hidden with carbolic acid. The butler led him up the marble staircase. Each step groaned under Persian carpets, each banister polished to a mirror sheen. Along the corridor, portraits of Pemberton ancestors stared down, ship captains, merchants, ladies in stiff gowns, officers in revolutionary uniforms. The weight of generations pressed from the walls. It was clear, this was not just a house. It was a monument to legacy, and every inch was designed to remind visitors of the Pembertons' power. The master bedroom. At last, Kraus opened the doors to the master bedroom. The chamber was more shrine than sleeping room. A massive four-poster bed dominated the space, carved with anchors and waves to honor the family's shipping empire. Midnight blue silk hung in drapes around it, glowing faintly under the gaslight. On the bed lay Cornelius Pemberton. He was dressed in his finest black evening coat, with pearl studs glinting on a starched white shirt and a silk cravat tied in the Windsor knot he had been known for in life. His gray hair was combed neatly, his face pale but carefully preserved. The undertaker had done his work with precision. The patriarch of Boston's wealthiest clan looked every inch the noble leader, at least at first glance. But Hartwell's trained eye noticed two things at once. The curtains had been drawn for far too long, shutting out natural light. And the room smelled wrong. Too much acid, too much effort to hide something. Even the arrangement of the furniture felt staged. As if the family had carefully planned not just the memorial, but the story these photographs would tell. The widow. The family's requests soon became clear. Kraus produced a sheet of instructions written in the widow's elegant script. Each family member wanted a photograph with Cornelius, posed in ways that reflected their special relationship with him. One by one, they entered. First came Margaret Pemberton, the widow. She was striking even in mourning, steel gray hair pinned with tortoiseshell combs, a black dress heavy with jet beads that caught the gaslight. Her hands shook slightly as she approached the bed. "I want to be photographed holding his hand," she said firmly. "We were married 34 years. No one knew him better than I did." Her voice was strong, but her eyes flicked constantly toward her children, as though afraid of what they might say, or reveal. The eldest son. Next was Theodore Pemberton, the eldest son and heir. 38 years old, he had his father's sharp jaw but none of his father's warmth. His mourning clothes were perfect. A black Savile Row frock coat, silk vest, polished Oxford shoes. But Hartwell's eye caught a detail others might miss: mud clinging to those expensive shoes, fresh enough to stain the carpets. "I should be photographed with my hand on his shoulder," Theodore announced. His tone carried entitlement, not grief. "I was his partner in all things." His right hand. The way he placed his hand on the corpse's shoulder didn't feel like love, it felt like possession. Like he was staking a claim. The youngest son. Then came Frederick, the younger son, only 25. He looked nothing like Theodore. Nervous, pale, he fidgeted constantly, tapping his fingers against his thigh as if to a tune only he could hear. His request shocked Hartwell. He wanted to kneel at his father's bedside. "Father always said I was his favorite," Frederick muttered, eyes darting toward his brother. "I want that remembered." The bitterness in the air was thick. Theodore's glare at Frederick said more than words ever could. The daughter. Finally, Constance, the daughter, entered. Around 30 years old, she was pale, her dark hair pulled tightly back. Her mourning gown, though elegant, seemed to hang loosely, as though she had been ill or had not eaten in days. Her eyes lingered on her father's body, not with sadness but with something else. Something Hartwell couldn't yet name. When her turn came, she asked quietly, "I would like to stand beside him." No touching, just standing. The request was strange, almost as if she didn't want to be seen as connected, but couldn't refuse. A strange performance. For hours, Hartwell worked, preparing glass plates, adjusting lights, measuring exposure times while each family member posed with the body. He had done this work countless times, but never under such tension. The widow's shaking hands, the heir's muddy shoes, the younger son's desperate claims, the daughter's distance. It was less a family in mourning, and more a cast of actors, each performing their part in a play where the audience was one man with a camera. Hartwell felt the truth pressing in. Something here was wrong. Very wrong. To be continued. As the final plates dried in their cases, Hartwell realized the photographs he was making weren't just memorials. They were evidence of secrets this family would kill to keep hidden. But the most chilling discovery was still to come. Join us in part 3, where Hartwell's camera captures details no human eye was meant to see, and where the Pemberton family's grief begins to unravel into something far darker. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. Because Boston's shadows are just getting darker. This rewrite keeps it tense, atmospheric, and easy for American YouTube listeners, while pushing the narrative forward to a cliffhanger. Do you want me to keep writing each part 3 to 10 one by one in full 1,000 words like this, or should I first map out a 10-part outline with all the main twists so you see where the story goes? Part 3: The Photographer's Discovery. Hook. Imagine being called to photograph a grieving family's patriarch, only to discover, through your own camera, that the dead man might not have died naturally. That the family mourning around him may actually be his killers. That was exactly what Jonathan Hartwell, Boston's most respected memorial photographer, was about to uncover inside the Pemberton mansion. The morning light was dim, the curtains drawn heavy, and the air in the Pemberton home carried a cold, unsettling stillness. Hartwell had photographed many wealthy families before, but never one that felt so rehearsed, so performative in their grief. Constance, the daughter, made the most unusual request. She wanted to place a white rose on her father's chest and lean close as though kissing his forehead. It struck Hartwell as almost too intimate. Her father was gone. Why stage such closeness now, in death, when it had not been shown in life? Daddy always called me his little princess, she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. Even when I disappointed him with my choice of husband. The remark hung in the air like a shadow. Clearly, even on this day of mourning, bitterness about past choices lingered. Hartwell could not shake the sense that each family member was putting on a performance, as though the room were a stage and he, the photographer, was their only audience. Margaret, the widow, sat stiffly at her husband's side, holding his hand in a gesture meant to look tender. Theodore, the eldest son, placed his hand on Cornelius's shoulder with a kind of quiet possession, while Frederick, the younger son, knelt beside the bed, forcing himself into a role of dutiful sorrow. But beneath the careful posing, Hartwell heard the whispers. "We must change the will before anyone else finds out," Margaret hissed to Theodore. "We have to act quickly, before the lawyers start asking questions," Frederick muttered to Constance. "Make sure those arrangements stay private." Their words slithered through the quiet room like serpents, heavy with secrets, sharp with fear. Even the butler, Wilhelm Krauss, could not keep his composure. His hands trembled as he pulled the curtains at Hartwell's request, nearly dropping the heavy fabric. Sweat glistened on his brow despite the February chill. "Forgive me," he stammered, "this has been a most difficult time. Mr. Pemberton's death was so sudden. So peaceful." Dr. Morrison attended him. He passed in his sleep. Peaceful. That word echoed strangely in Hartwell's mind. He had seen many peaceful deaths. Cornelius Pemberton's face did not bear that serenity. Something in his expression, taut, unsettled, spoke of struggle, not slumber. Still, Hartwell kept silent. His job was to capture images, not to question the circumstances. Or so he told himself. By late afternoon, the portraits were finished, and Hartwell retreated to the pantry, which had been converted into a makeshift darkroom. The familiar ritual calmed him. Chemicals, glass plates, the red glow of the safety lamp. Slowly, ghost-like, the faces of the Pembertons and their patriarch emerged from the baths of silver and developer. But as the images sharpened into focus, Hartwell's heart began to race. In Margaret's portrait, Cornelius's hand, supposedly resting naturally in hers, looked stiff, the fingers awkward, as though placed there. A scratch marked the back of his hand, faint but undeniable. Hartwell leaned closer. It was not the scratch of a coffin nail or funeral preparation. It looked like a fingernail mark, made in life, not death. Theodore's portrait revealed something else. The shoulder seam of Cornelius's jacket was pulled, torn slightly, a detail invisible to the naked eye but captured by Hartwell's precise lens. And on the collar, faint but unmistakable, was a dark stain. Not dirt, not shadow, blood. Hartwell's breath caught. Frederick's portrait chilled him to the core. The angle of light revealed Cornelius's face more fully than before. This was no peaceful repose. His mouth hung slightly open, frozen in what looked like a gasp for air. His eyes were not closed in rest, but in a grimace of fear. Worse still, faint bruises appeared around the neck, concealed beneath layers of makeup and the high collar of his shirt. And his hands. In every other portrait, they seemed folded properly on his chest. But in Frederick's image, caught from a different angle, Hartwell saw the truth. The fingers were curled, clenched into fists, the knuckles tight with rigor mortis. These were not the hands of a man who drifted away in sleep. They were the hands of a man who fought. Hartwell's stomach turned. He hung the plates to dry, his hands shaking as badly as the butler's. His mind reeled. This was no natural death. This was no peaceful passing. Cornelius Pemberton had died in terror, struggling against hands that squeezed the life from him. And the family, the very ones who now posed so solemnly for photographs, were not grieving. They were covering their tracks. The next morning, Boston lay beneath fresh snow, its streets hushed and muffled. Hartwell carried the developed plates to his studio, where proper light and magnification would allow him to study them in greater detail. What he saw there stripped away any final shred of doubt. Cornelius's hands bore scratches and cuts consistent with defensive struggle. The collar stains were blood. And in Constance's portrait, the one where she bent low with her white rose, Hartwell noticed something new. The angle of her gesture had shifted her father's collar just enough to reveal the truth. A row of bruises, oval-shaped, perfectly spaced, finger marks, the marks of strangulation. Hartwell sat frozen, staring at the images spread across his work table like a puzzle only he had the pieces to solve. The Pembertons had not hired him to document grief. They had unknowingly hired him to capture their crime. And now the evidence, etched forever in glass and silver, lay in his hands. But if the family discovered what he knew, how long would he remain safe inside his own studio? Hartwell's photographs had turned from art into accusation. And the Pemberton family was not finished hiding their secrets. Right finger to be continued in Part 4. Do you want me to continue Part 4 in the same style, 1000 words, with a fresh hook and simple storytelling where Hartwell begins to decide whether to expose the family, or hide the truth for his own safety? Part 4: The Secrets Behind the Walls. Hook. What would you do if you uncovered proof of murder, etched forever in photographs, and the killers were the very people who paid you? Walk away, call the police, or stay silent, knowing the family's fortune gave them power to destroy anyone who stood in their way. Jonathan Hartwell, the photographer, now faced that choice. The morning after the Pemberton funeral session, Hartwell sat in his studio surrounded by the haunting images. Each photograph told the same terrible truth: Cornelius Pemberton had not died peacefully. He had been murdered. The bruises, the scratches, the clenched fists, every plate captured what the naked eye had missed. It was as if the camera itself had conspired to reveal what the living tried so hard to conceal. Hartwell knew the danger. The Pembertons were no ordinary family. Their shipping empire stretched from Boston to London, their wealth bought them influence in politics, in business, and even in the courts. If he accused them, who would listen? Worse, who would protect him? Still, something inside him would not allow silence. He felt the weight of the photographs like a curse. By late afternoon, he decided to return to the mansion under the guise of delivering the first prints. His true purpose was far more dangerous: to search for answers within the house itself. The Pemberton mansion loomed against the gray sky, its tall windows like unblinking eyes. Snow crunched beneath Hartwell's boots as he approached. The butler, Wilhelm Kraus, greeted him at the door, his hands still trembling, his face pale. "Mr. Hartwell," Kraus said softly, "they did not expect you back so soon." "I wished to confirm lighting for the enlargements," Hartwell lied smoothly. The family would not want imperfections in their portraits. Kraus hesitated, then nodded and let him inside. The grand hallway smelled faintly of funeral flowers mixed with something sharper, chemicals, perhaps. The silence pressed in around him, broken only by the distant ticking of a grandfather clock. As he waited for Margaret Pemberton, Hartwell's eyes roamed the hall. He noticed a faint discoloration on the rug near the stairway, brownish stains that could have been from spilled wine, or something darker. Margaret descended the staircase with calculated grace, her black dress trailing behind her. Her expression was carefully arranged, but her eyes betrayed weariness. "Mr. Hartwell," she said, "you are most diligent. Have you brought the proofs?" "Not yet," Hartwell replied. "I came only to prepare. The images are delicate." Her lips curved into a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Yes, delicate things often require care." The words carried an edge, a hidden meaning Hartwell could not ignore. Later, when Margaret excused herself, Hartwell wandered toward the back of the house, pretending to admire the architecture. He passed closed doors and silent corridors until he reached the library. The door stood slightly ajar. Inside, he heard voices. Theodore's deep tone. "The lawyer will ask questions. We must be united." Frederick's nervous reply. Hartwell saw too much. "Those cameras catch details the eye forgets." Constance's voice, low and sharp. "Then make sure he doesn't become a problem." Hartwell froze. His heart pounded in his chest so loudly he feared they would hear it. He dared not move until the voices faded. Only then did he slip silently away, shaken to his core. They were already thinking of him. That night, back in his studio, Hartwell studied the photographs again. He searched for more than evidence of murder, he searched for motive. Why had Cornelius's own blood betrayed him? He remembered the whispers during the session, wills, lawyers, arrangements. Perhaps Cornelius had planned to cut someone out, or change his estate. Perhaps greed had driven them all to turn against him. As he examined Constance's portrait, the one with the white rose, Hartwell noticed something else. On her wrist, faint but visible, was a bruise, as if from a strong grip. Could Cornelius have struggled with her, leaving behind his final mark on his daughter even as they silenced him? The thought sickened him. Hartwell leaned back, staring at the plates hanging like spectral windows on his studio wall. He realized the truth. These photographs were not just evidence of a crime. They were a curse. They bound him to the family's secret. And the family already suspected. 2 days later, a letter arrived at his studio. The envelope was thick, sealed with the Pemberton crest. Inside was a note written in elegant script. "Mr. Hartwell, your work is satisfactory. Deliver no more than what is asked. We will compensate you generously for your silence and discretion. Some matters of family must remain within the family. You understand. MP." Hartwell's hands shook as he read it. Generous compensation was no offer. It was a warning, a leash. He burned the letter in his stove, but the words remained burned into his memory. That night, he dreamt of Cornelius. The old man's face appeared not peaceful, not even terrified, but pleading. His mouth opened in a silent cry, his bruised throat straining. And behind him stood the family, Margaret, Theodore, Frederick, Constance, smiling, their eyes cold, their hands stained with invisible blood. Hartwell awoke drenched in sweat, his heart pounding. The photographs sat in his darkroom, waiting, watching, like restless spirits unwilling to let him go. He knew he had only two choices: destroy the images, or risk everything to expose the truth. But if he destroyed them, Cornelius's last struggle would vanish into silence. If he exposed them, Hartwell might not live long enough to see justice done. For the next several days, Hartwell wrestled with his conscience. The Pembertons had power, money, and friends in high places. He was just a photographer. Yet the images whispered to him, as though the dead themselves demanded vengeance. Finally, one evening, he made his decision. He carefully packed several of the most damning plates, the ones showing the scratches, the torn clothing, the bruises, into a wooden case. He would take them to someone outside the family's reach. A lawyer. A journalist. Someone brave enough to act. But as he secured the case, a noise outside his studio window made him freeze. Footsteps crunched in the snow. Shadows moved just beyond the frosted glass. The Pembertons were watching. Right finger to be continued in part 5. Would you like me to continue part 5 with Hartwell deciding whether to flee Boston with the photographs, or face the Pembertons directly, knowing they may already be plotting to silence him? Part 5 Shadows in the Snow. Hook. What would you do if the most powerful family in Boston was watching your every move, waiting for you to slip? Jonathan Hartwell, the photographer who had unknowingly uncovered murder, now realized the Pembertons weren't just hiding secrets. They were hunting him. The night outside his studio was bitter cold. Snowflakes fell softly, muting the usual noise of the city. But Hartwell's heart pounded too loudly for him to notice the beauty of the storm. He sat in the dark, the wooden case of photographs clutched tight to his chest. Outside, shadows moved against the white snow, too heavy to be drifting branches, too slow to be passing strangers. Someone was out there, watching. Hartwell blew out the lamp. The studio sank into complete darkness, broken only by the faint glow of the street's gas lamps seeping through frosted glass. He waited. The crunch of footsteps stopped. Silence. Then came a knock at the door. 3 sharp raps. Hartwell's breath froze in his throat. He didn't answer. Instead, he moved quietly toward the back door, the wooden floorboards groaning softly beneath his weight. His hands trembled as he slid the lock open. He stepped out into the alley, the snow crunching beneath his boots. The alley stretched behind the studio, empty for now, but the feeling of being followed clung to him like a shadow. Hartwell pulled his coat tight and hurried away, clutching the case of glass plates under his arm. The streets of Boston were nearly deserted at this late hour. Carriages rolled by occasionally, their wheels hissing against the slush, but few pedestrians braved the storm. Hartwell moved quickly, head down, every sound magnified by fear. He knew where he must go. Not to the police, they were too easily bought. Not to a journalist, they would demand proof he could not yet give. No, he needed someone who had fought the Pembertons before, someone who had reason to hate them. He thought of Elias Turner, an old friend of his father's, once a shipping merchant ruined by Cornelius Pemberton's ruthless business tactics. Turner lived on the edge of the harbor now, in a small brick house that smelled of salt and coal smoke. If anyone would listen, it would be him. Hartwell arrived well past midnight, his boots soaked, his hands raw from the cold. He pounded on Turner's door until a lantern flickered inside. The door opened to reveal the gaunt figure of an old man in a woolen robe, his eyes sharp despite the hour. Jonathan Hartwell, Turner rasped. What devil brings you here at this time of night? Cornelius Pemberton is dead, Hartwell blurted, shoving the case into Turner's hands. But not as they claim. I have proof. The old man's eyes narrowed. He ushered Hartwell inside, bolting the door behind him. The room smelled of smoke and seawater. Maps of shipping routes hung on the walls, faded and curling at the edges. Hartwell set the plates carefully on the table. Turner lit a lamp and leaned over the images as they developed in Hartwell's portable viewer. His hands shook, but his eyes remained steady as he examined the details. The bruises, the scratches, the torn fabric. Finally, Turner looked up, his face grim. You understand what you've done, boy? He whispered. You've trapped yourself between truth and death. The Pembertons won't let this see daylight. They'll kill you before they let these plates reach the public. I can't destroy them, Hartwell said, his voice trembling. It would be like burying Cornelius again. He fought for his life. These images are his last cry for justice. Turner sighed, rubbing his forehead. Then we must be clever. We'll make copies, smaller prints that can be hidden, distributed quietly. If they silence one of us, the evidence will still live. Hartwell nodded, relief and fear mixing inside him. For the first time since entering that mansion, he felt less alone. But the Pembertons were not idle. Back at the mansion, Margaret sat in the morning room, her hands clasped around a glass of brandy. Theodore stood near the fire, his eyes blazing. He took something, Theodore said. Kraus saw him leave with a case. Plates, no doubt, he knows. Margaret's face hardened. Then we must act before he speaks. No loose ends. Constance sat silently by the window, the snow's pale glow illuminating her face. Her eyes were distant, haunted. Father is already gone. Must we kill again? Her mother turned sharply. If you wish to keep your inheritance, your position, your safety, you will stay silent, Constance. Do you understand? The girl nodded slowly, though her hands clenched in her lap until her knuckles whitened. Frederick shifted nervously in his chair, his voice barely above a whisper. Hartwell won't keep quiet. He's stubborn. He'll show someone. Theodore smiled coldly. Then he must disappear. Back at Turner's home, Hartwell worked through the night. He and Turner prepared small prints from the plates, each one revealing the terrible truth hidden beneath the Pemberton's polished facade. They worked by lamplight, the red glow of the chemicals staining their faces like blood. When the first print emerged fully, Turner held it up, his hand shaking. Here, he said, the bruise on the neck. Clear as daylight. Anyone who sees this will know. But before Hartwell could respond, a sound outside froze them both. The crunch of footsteps in the snow. Turner quickly extinguished the lamp. The room plunged into darkness, the only light the faint silver glow of moonlight through the curtains. The footsteps drew closer. Then, a sharp knock at the door. Neither man moved. The knock came again, harder this time. Mr. Hartwell, a voice called from outside. Smooth, commanding, unmistakable. Theodore Pemberton, open the door. We only wish to speak. Hartwell's blood turned to ice. Turner leaned close, his whisper fierce. Don't move, don't speak. If you open that door, you're a dead man. The knock turned into pounding. The heavy oak rattled on its hinges. Open, Theodore barked, or we'll come in. Hartwell clutched the case of plates to his chest, his heart slamming against his ribs. In that moment, he realized the truth. The Pembertons would not rest until he was silenced. And if they broke through that door tonight, not even Elias Turner's loyalty could save him. Right finger to be continued in Part 6. Would you like Part 6 to focus on a violent confrontation at Turner's house, or should Hartwell and Turner escape into the frozen streets of Boston, leading to a deadly chase through the city? Part 6: The Chase Through the Frozen Streets. Hook. Imagine this, snow falling heavy, a city asleep, and behind you the footsteps of killers who won't stop until your blood freezes in the street. That was the reality Edgar Hartwell faced when the Pemberton family came pounding at the door. The pounding grew louder. Dust shook loose from the beams above. Theodore Pemberton's voice cut through the winter night like a knife. Open the door, Hartwell. Or we'll open it for you. Inside the small harbor house, Edgar Hartwell and Elias Turner sat in silence. The fire in the grate had been smothered, and the only light came from the pale moon leaking through the curtains. Hartwell's fingers clenched tight around the wooden case of photographs, the only proof of the Pemberton crime. Turner leaned close, whispering urgently. We can't hold them off. If they come through, we'll both die. We need to run, now. Hartwell's heart pounded, but he nodded. The old man moved quickly, surprising for his age. He pulled open a trapdoor hidden beneath the worn rug. Coal chute, he muttered. Drops to the alley. Go. Hartwell hesitated. The pounding at the door turned into the cracking of wood as someone outside swung a heavy object against it. Splinters flew. Voices shouted. They didn't have minutes, they had seconds. He lowered himself into the chute, clutching the case tight. The iron walls scraped his coat as he slid down, the stench of coal dust choking his throat. He hit the frozen ground hard, snow cushioning the fall just enough to keep him moving. Turner followed, grunting as his frail body struck the ground. He pushed himself up, face smeared with soot. This way. The two men stumbled through the narrow alley, snow crunching beneath their boots. Behind them, the crash of splintering wood rang out. The Pembertons, or their hired men, had broken in. They were coming. Boston's harbor was a maze of alleys, warehouses, and lamplit docks. The storm had blanketed the city, muting sounds, disguising movements. Hartwell's breath poured from him in clouds as he ran, his lungs burning. Turner led the way, his knowledge of the wharves proving invaluable. Keep low, the old man hissed. These bastards are hunters. They'll have pistols. Hartwell glanced back. Shadows emerged from the alley they'd fled, tall figures with lanterns and long coats. Theodore's voice carried through the storm. Find them. Alive, if possible. Kill the old man if you must. Hartwell's stomach twisted. He knew Theodore was capable of murder, his father's corpse proved that. And now, Theodore wanted his silence, no matter the cost. They ducked behind a stack of crates, hearts hammering. The glow of lanterns swept across the snow just feet away. Voices muttered. Boots crunched. One of the pursuers paused. Tracks. Fresh. Turner squeezed Hartwell's arm. Run when I say. The lantern beam lingered, sweeping dangerously close. The man leaned down, studying the snow. Now, Turner shouted. They bolted. Shouts erupted behind them. There. Stop them. Gunfire cracked. A bullet tore through the crate beside Hartwell, sending wood splinters flying into his face. He stumbled but kept moving, the case of photographs bouncing against his ribs. They raced toward the docks, the smell of salt and coal filling their lungs. The storm howled around them, snow whipping across the frozen water. There, Turner pointed, a narrow fishing boat, tied loosely to the dock, bobbed in the icy harbor. It's our only chance. Dash dash dash. The chase turned frantic. Hartwell leapt onto the slick wooden planks, nearly losing his balance. Turner followed, wheezing from exertion. Together they fumbled with the ropes, their fingers stiff with cold. Behind them, lanterns grew brighter. Footsteps pounded. Theodore's voice roared above the storm. Don't let them escape. Hartwell pulled at the rope with all his strength, the frozen fibers cutting into his palms. Finally, it came free. The boat drifted from the dock, snow settling on its deck. Turner shoved a long oar into Hartwell's hands. Row, boy, row like hell itself is after you. Hartwell obeyed, thrusting the oar into the black water, his arms screaming with the effort. The boat lurched forward, cutting through the icy harbor. Gunshots rang out. Bullets slapped into the water around them, hissing like angry serpents. One whistled past Hartwell's ear, so close he felt the heat of it. Faster, Turner urged, his voice hoarse. Hartwell rowed until his muscles burned, each pull of the oar dragging them further from the dock. Lanterns bobbed on the pier, figures shouting, but the storm swallowed their voices. Finally, the boat slipped into the fog that hung heavy over the water. The lanterns grew dim, then disappeared altogether. For a moment, only the sound of Hartwell's ragged breathing and the creak of the oars filled the night. They were safe. For now. Dash dash dash. Turner slumped against the side of the boat, coughing hard. His thin frame shook with exhaustion. You did well, lad. But don't think this is over. They'll hunt us through the city. Theodore won't sleep until he has those plates. Hartwell looked down at the case in his lap, the wood damp with snow but still sealed tight. Inside were the glass images of Cornelius Pemberton's last fight for life, the scratches, the bruises, the terror etched forever in silver nitrate. I can't keep running, Hartwell said, his voice low. We need allies. Someone the Pembertons can't touch. Turner gave a bitter laugh. In Boston, there's no one they can't touch. The police, the courts, the papers, they're all bought and paid for. Then we take it higher, Hartwell said, surprising himself with his determination. Beyond Boston, beyond Massachusetts, if we must. Someone must believe the truth. Turner studied him for a long moment, his face lit by the faint glow of the harbor lights. You've got fire in you, boy. Maybe that'll keep you alive. They drifted through the fog, the city's skyline a faint silhouette behind them. Somewhere in the darkness, church bells tolled the hour, 3 in the morning. Hartwell shivered, not just from the cold, but from the knowledge that Boston itself had turned against him. Every street, every alley, every shadow could conceal an enemy now. As the boat cut silently through the icy water, one thought repeated in his mind, chilling him more than the storm ever could. The Pembertons had murdered once. And if he wasn't careful, he would be next. Dash dash dash. Right finger to be continued in part 7. Dash dash dash. Do you want part 7 to take place in Boston's hidden underworld, taverns, smugglers, and secret allies, or should we shift into the Pemberton mansion itself, where dark family secrets unravel further? Part 7 Shadows Beneath the City. Hook. What would you do if the only people willing to help you were criminals hiding under the streets, men feared more than the law itself? Edgar Hartwell was about to find out. The boat scraped against the rotting wood of an abandoned dock, far from Boston's main wharves. The storm had quieted, leaving the harbor wrapped in a blanket of fog so thick it muffled even the sound of the tide. Turner climbed out first, clutching his side as though each step might break his ribs. Hartwell followed, holding the case tight. The cold gnawed through his coat, but it was fear that kept his body trembling. "Where are we?" Hartwell whispered. Turner's voice was little more than a growl. "Dockside. Not the kind of place you want to wander alone. But it's where we'll find help." Hartwell frowned. "Help? From who?" The old man looked at him with tired, hollow eyes. "From the ones who don't fear the Pembertons. And trust me, there aren't many of those left." The alleys near the dock smelled of fish, rot, and spilled whiskey. Broken windows glimmered with faint lamplight. The sound of a fiddle carried through the mist, sharp and ragged. Turner led Hartwell down a narrow passage, then knocked 3 times on a door marked with a faded symbol, a serpent coiled around a dagger. The door creaked open. A thick man with scarred cheeks glared out. "Turner," he said slowly, as though deciding whether to spit the name or welcome it. "You should have been dead 10 years ago." "Maybe I should have," Turner muttered. "But I'm not, and I need to see Callahan." The man's eyes shifted to Hartwell, then to the case in his hands. He said nothing, but stepped aside. Inside, the air was heavy with smoke and sweat. The tavern's ceiling hung low, beams blackened with years of fire and soot. Men crowded around tables, throwing dice, drinking cheap rum, and trading secrets with eyes that never stopped watching. Hartwell felt every gaze burn into him. He tightened his grip on the case, knowing one wrong move could see it ripped from his hands. At the far end of the room sat Callahan. He was a tall man, lean as a blade, his hair tied back, his eyes like cold steel. A scar stretched from his temple down to his jaw, twisting his face into a permanent sneer. Turner approached slowly. "Callahan," he said, bowing his head slightly. "I wouldn't bother you if it wasn't life or death." Callahan didn't move. He smoked his pipe, exhaled, and finally spoke. "Theodore Pemberton's men came through here an hour ago. They asked about you. You're either brave or stupid to walk into my den after that." Turner lowered himself into the chair opposite him. Hartwell stood behind, clutching the case like a shield. "We've got proof," Turner said. "Proof that Cornelius Pemberton didn't die of sickness. He was murdered, strangled in his own bed." Callahan's eyes flicked to Hartwell. "And you are?" Hartwell swallowed hard. "Edgar Hartwell. I was there. I saw the body. I have the photographs." He lifted the case slightly, the wood creaking in his grip. The room grew quieter. Even the dice stopped rolling. Men leaned in, listening. Callahan tapped the ash from his pipe. "Photographs, dangerous little things. The Pembertons would kill 10 men to destroy them. Which makes me wonder, why should I risk my neck to protect you?" Turner leaned forward. "Because you hate the Pembertons as much as I do. Maybe more. They've bled this city dry, bought judges, ruined families. If Hartwell's pictures see the light of day, it'll drag them into the dirt." Callahan's smile was thin, sharp. "And if it doesn't? If all it does is bring more fire down on my house?" The silence stretched, broken only by the crack of a log in the hearth. Finally, Callahan leaned back. "You can stay. For tonight. But understand this, if the Pembertons come knocking, I won't burn for you." That night, Hartwell couldn't sleep. The tavern's cellar stank of damp stone and mold. Rats scurried along the beams above. Turner slept on a cot, snoring softly, but Hartwell sat awake, the case resting on his knees. Every creak of the wood above made his stomach tighten. He kept hearing Theodore's voice echo in his head, "Alive, if possible. Kill the old man if you must." He opened the case, careful not to wake Turner. Inside, the glass plates gleamed faintly in the lantern light. He lifted one, holding it toward the glow. Cornelius Pemberton's face stared back, eyes wide in terror, mouth twisted, bruises dark on his throat. The image was frozen, eternal, impossible to deny. Hartwell's hands shook. He closed the case quickly, fear gnawing at his gut. If these plates fell into the wrong hands, he'd be as good as dead. And then he heard it, the floorboards above groaning, slow, deliberate. Not the shuffle of drunks, but the weight of men moving with purpose. Hartwell shook Turner awake. Someone's here. The old man's eyes snapped open, sharper than Hartwell expected. He grabbed his cane, whispering, "Stay quiet." The cellar door creaked open. A sliver of light spilled down the steps. Shadows moved, 3, maybe 4 men. Then came the voice. Cold, familiar. "Theodore Pemberton sends his regards." Chaos erupted. The intruders stormed down the steps, blades gleaming. Turner swung his cane, striking one man hard in the temple. The thug crumpled. Hartwell scrambled back, clutching the case. Another man lunged at him. Hartwell swung wildly, the case smashing into the attacker's jaw. Glass shattered inside, the plates. "No!" Hartwell cried, but he had no time to check. The man dropped, blood spilling from his mouth. Turner shouted, "Run, lad!" But the cellar door slammed shut above them. More boots thundered on the stairs. The Pembertons hadn't just found them. They had trapped them. Hartwell's pulse roared in his ears. The fog outside was no longer protection. Boston itself had become a cage. And he realized something that chilled him deeper than the storm ever had. The Pembertons weren't afraid of the truth. They were afraid of it escaping. And they would burn the city to ashes before they let that happen. Right finger to be continued in Part 8. Do you want Part 8 to focus on the bloody fight in the cellar and their desperate escape, or should it shift into the Pemberton mansion, where Theodore reveals just how deep the family's corruption runs? Part 8: Blood in the Cellar. Hook. Imagine being trapped underground with murderers closing in, your only weapon a wooden case filled with fragile photographs. That was where Edgar Hartwell found himself, the night Boston's shadows came alive. The cellar felt smaller by the second. The air grew hot with sweat and smoke from the torches carried by the intruders. Shadows leapt along the damp stone walls, making the room look alive. Turner swung his cane again, knocking a torch from one man's hand. The flame hit the dirt floor, sputtering out. "Hartwell," Turner barked, "keep the case safe, no matter what." Hartwell backed into the far corner, clutching the shattered case. He could feel the sharp edges of broken glass plates shifting inside. The very evidence that could expose the Pembertons' crime might already be ruined. One of the attackers lunged at Turner, slashing with a knife. The old man twisted aside, but not fast enough. Blood streaked across his sleeve. He gritted his teeth and drove his cane into the man's gut, sending him crashing into a barrel of stale ale. Hartwell's heart pounded. He wasn't a fighter. He was a photographer, a man of chemicals and glass. But survival demanded more than craft. When another thug charged him, Hartwell swung the case like a hammer. The corner cracked against the man's skull, dropping him with a sickening thud. Hartwell gasped, staring at what he'd done. His hands trembled, not just from fear but from the realization that survival now required violence. The cellar filled with shouts as more boots pounded down the steps. Theodore Pemberton's men were many, too many. Turner staggered toward Hartwell. "We can't hold them." As if on cue, the tavern above erupted in chaos. Shouts, gunshots, the crash of overturned tables. Callahan's men had finally realized the fight had come to them. The floor trembled with the weight of the battle raging overhead. Turner shoved Hartwell toward the back wall. "There's a passage, old smuggler's tunnel. Callahan showed me years ago. Find it." Hartwell frantically searched the damp stones. His fingers scraped against a loose brick. He pushed, and a section of wall shifted, revealing a narrow black tunnel. "Go," Turner hissed. Hartwell crawled inside, clutching the case. The tunnel was barely wide enough to move through, the air thick with dust and mildew. Behind him, Turner swung his cane one last time, holding back the men who lunged with blades. "Turner," Hartwell cried, his voice echoing in the cramped passage. "Keep going, lad," the old man shouted, his voice fading beneath the clash of steel. The truth matters more than me. Then came a scream, sharp and final. Hartwell froze, every part of him begging to turn back. But Turner's words burned in his skull. He crawled forward, choking on tears and dust. The case dug into his ribs, but he clutched it tighter than ever. Dash dash dash. The tunnel stretched endlessly, twisting like a serpent under the city. Rats scurried past his hands. Water dripped from above, soaking his hair. Finally, a faint glow appeared ahead. Hartwell crawled faster, lungs burning, until he emerged into another chamber. It was an old brick room, forgotten and half-collapsed, with a rotting ladder leading upward. He climbed shakily, every rung threatening to snap. At last, he shoved open a wooden hatch. Cold night air hit his face, fresh and biting. Hartwell pulled himself onto the street. He was in an alley near Boston's old wharves, the fog rolling in thick sheets. The city was silent here, save for the distant toll of a church bell. He collapsed against the wall, clutching the broken case. For the first time since this nightmare began, he was utterly alone. Dash dash dash. Hartwell dared to open the case, his hands trembling. Inside, most of the plates were cracked, some shattered into glittering shards. His heart sank. But then, he found one intact. Just one. He held it up to the lamplight at the end of the alley. Cornelius Pemberton's bruised throat glared back at him, captured in merciless detail. The image was enough, if he could get it into the right hands. Hartwell closed the case, his resolve hardening. Turner had died for this evidence. He couldn't let it be for nothing. But even as he stood, footsteps echoed through the fog. Slow, steady, deliberate. From the mist emerged Theodore Pemberton himself. His coat was immaculate, his gloves white even in the damp. Behind him came two men, their faces shadowed. Hartwell's blood ran cold. "Mr. Hartwell," Theodore said smoothly, as though greeting an old friend. "You've caused quite a mess tonight." Hartwell stumbled back. "You killed him. You killed Turner." Theodore's lips curved into a smile that didn't touch his eyes. "The old man outlived his usefulness. As you will, soon enough. But first, I'll need what you carry." He gestured toward the case. Hartwell clutched it tighter. "These photographs will expose you. I'll take them to the police, the newspapers." Theodore's laugh was soft, chilling. "Do you truly believe ink and paper can topple the Pembertons? The police dine at my table. The newspapers print what I tell them. Boston belongs to us." Hartwell shook his head violently. "The truth always finds a way." Theodore stepped closer, his eyes gleaming like a predator's. "Perhaps. But not tonight." The two men flanking him advanced, knives flashing in the fog. Hartwell's pulse roared in his ears. He glanced around, brick walls to either side, the harbor behind. No escape. His hand brushed against the broken glass inside the case. Sharp edges dug into his palm, drawing blood. A desperate idea sparked. He pulled out a shattered plate, the jagged edge glittering. When the first thug lunged, Hartwell slashed wildly. The man cried out, clutching his face as blood poured down. Hartwell shoved past, running blind into the fog, the case banging against his side. Theodore's voice followed him, calm and certain. "Run, little photographer. Run as far as you can. But Boston is small, and you cannot outrun a family like mine." Dash dash dash. Hartwell didn't stop running until his legs gave out. He collapsed in a deserted churchyard, snow crunching beneath him. The ruined case lay across his chest, heavy as a coffin. Only one plate survived. Only one chance remained. As the bells tolled midnight, Edgar Hartwell swore to himself that he would not rest until Cornelius Pemberton's murder was exposed, even if it cost him his life. But deep in the fog, Theodore's laughter still echoed. Dash dash dash. Right finger to be continued in part 9. Dash dash dash. Do you want part 9 to focus on Hartwell seeking help from Boston's clergy and reformers, or should it dive deeper into Theodore's side, showing the Pemberton family plotting their next move inside the mansion? Part 9: The Devil's Bargain. Hook. What would you do if the city itself seemed owned by the very killers you were trying to expose? That was Edgar Hartwell's nightmare. The deeper he searched for justice, the more he realized Boston's power flowed straight into the hands of the Pemberton family. Dash dash dash. The churchyard was silent except for the rustling of winter wind through bare branches. Hartwell sat against a gravestone, clutching the ruined case to his chest. His breath rose in clouds, his blood still fresh on his palm from the shattered glass. He stared at the one surviving plate. Cornelius Pemberton's face, pale and terrified in death, stared back at him. The bruises on his throat glowed like dark brands in the lamplight. It was proof of murder. Proof worth dying for. But to whom could he show it? Theodore was right. The police were bought, the newspapers controlled. If he brought this plate to the wrong person, it would vanish into a fire, and Hartwell would vanish with it. He rose unsteadily and limped into the night. Somewhere in Boston, there had to be someone brave enough to fight the Pembertons. Someone not already on their payroll. By dawn, Hartwell found himself in the office of Reverend Josiah Wentworth, a stern but kind-eyed minister known for his fiery sermons against corruption. The Reverend listened silently as Hartwell recounted everything: Turner's murder, the cellar escape, the photographs. Finally, Wentworth leaned back in his chair. "I have no doubt you speak the truth, Mr. Hartwell. I have long suspected the Pembertons of foul dealings. But suspicion is not enough. Your photograph, if genuine, is the dagger we need." Hartwell slid the plate across the desk. Wentworth lifted it gently, holding it to the morning light. His face tightened. "Good Lord, there is no mistaking this. Then you'll help me?" Hartwell asked desperately. Wentworth nodded. "I cannot go to the police. But there are reformers, men of conscience who still hold sway. Lawyers, judges with no love for Theodore's kind. They will know what to do. Tonight, I will gather them here." Relief flooded Hartwell for the first time in days. Perhaps Turner's death would not be in vain. That evening, the church basement filled with a small but determined group. Lawyers, a newspaperman from a rival paper, even a young politician who had campaigned on honesty in government. Hartwell displayed the photograph for them all, explaining what he had witnessed. The men leaned close, whispering to each other in grave tones. Finally, the lawyer, Mr. Caldwell, spoke. "This is damning evidence. If brought before the courts, it could destroy Theodore Pemberton and his family's empire." The newspaperman adjusted his spectacles. "But only if we act quickly. Theodore has friends in high places. Once he learns this photograph exists, he'll stop at nothing to silence us." Their plan was simple but dangerous. Hartwell would produce more prints from the surviving plate. Copies would be distributed in secret to several trusted figures, so even if one was destroyed, the truth would survive. For the first time, Hartwell felt hope flicker in his chest. But hope is fragile. As the meeting broke up, Hartwell lingered behind to pack the fragile plate. Reverend Wentworth placed a hand on his shoulder. "Be careful, son. Evil never sleeps. And the Pembertons are evil dressed in fine clothes." The words had barely left his lips when the church bell tolled, 3 slow, heavy strikes. Hartwell frowned. It wasn't the hour. The Reverend's face went pale. "That's not the bell ringer. That's a warning." Before Hartwell could ask what he meant, the basement door burst open. Smoke billowed down the steps, followed by the sound of boots. Shouts echoed through the sanctuary above. Theodore's men had found them. Chaos erupted. Men overturned tables, grabbing whatever they could as weapons. Hartwell snatched the case and clutched it tight. Through the smoke came Theodore himself, tall and immaculate as ever, his white gloves spotless despite the violence around him. His voice was calm, cutting through the panic like a blade. "Gentlemen," he said, "you gather here in shadows, plotting against your betters. Did you think Boston would not whisper your names to me? Did you think truth protects you? No, power protects." He pointed toward Hartwell. "Bring me the photographer." Hartwell bolted toward a side door, heart hammering. 2 thugs gave chase, their footsteps pounding like war drums. He shoved through the door into the snowy churchyard, his breath tearing in his throat. He ran between gravestones, clutching the case like a shield. Behind him, the men shouted, closing in. But as he rounded the far corner, a figure stepped from the fog. Not a thug, Constance Pemberton. Her black veil fluttered in the wind, her face pale and unreadable. She raised a gloved hand. Stop running, Mr. Hartwell. I can save you. Hartwell froze, chest heaving. Save me. Your family murdered your father. You expect me to trust you? Constance's eyes glistened in the moonlight. You don't understand. I didn't kill him. I loved him. But my brothers, she shuddered. They'll kill me too if I oppose them. You have proof. With it, we could bring them down. Together. Hartwell gripped the case tighter. Every instinct screamed not to trust her. Yet there was something desperate in her voice, something real. Why help me now? He demanded. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. Because Theodore has gone too far. He killed Turner, and now he'll kill anyone who threatens him. Even me. If you fall tonight, so do I. Before Hartwell could reply, the thugs burst into the yard. Constance turned, her face hardening. This way, she hissed, grabbing Hartwell's arm. She pulled him toward the old crypt at the far edge of the cemetery. They slipped inside just as the men closed in, their footsteps echoing on the frozen ground. The crypt door slammed, plunging them into darkness. Hartwell's chest heaved. He could barely see Constance's face in the dim moonlight filtering through cracks in the stone. Trust me, she whispered. It's the only chance either of us has. Outside, Theodore's voice rang cold and clear. Find them. Search every grave, every stone. My father's secrets die with that plate, and so will anyone who carries it. Hartwell clutched the case to his chest in the crypt's suffocating dark. For the first time, he wasn't sure if his salvation had just pulled him into safety, or into the jaws of a deeper trap. Right finger to be continued in part 10. Do you want part 10 to end with a terrifying supernatural twist, Cornelius's restless spirit seeking vengeance, or should it stay focused on the human horror of the Pemberton family's conspiracy? Part 10, The Last Exposure. Hook. What if the only thing standing between truth and darkness was a single photograph, evidence so powerful it could topple one of Boston's richest families? Edgar Hartwell knew he had one chance left. But in 1887, truth was deadly, and the Pembertons were ready to bury it, and him, forever. The crypt smelled of damp stone and centuries of decay. Hartwell pressed his back against the wall, clutching the case with the last surviving plate. The faint moonlight cut through cracks in the stone ceiling, just enough to reveal Constance Pemberton's pale face beside him. Do you trust me yet? She whispered. Hartwell's voice was raw. I don't trust anyone with the name Pemberton. Constance didn't flinch. Fair, but if you die here, the truth dies with you. And my father's murderers win. Outside, boots crunched across frozen ground. Theodore's voice carried, calm and merciless. Search the graves. Tear open the crypts. They can't hide forever. Hartwell felt his chest tighten. The walls seemed to press in, the air thin with panic. But Constance touched his arm, her voice steady. I know a way out. My father showed me when I was a girl. There's a passage behind the altar. It leads to the old carriage tunnels. Hartwell's first instinct was doubt, but desperation outweighed suspicion. Together they pushed against a slab of stone, revealing a narrow gap. Cold air rushed in. Without another word, they slipped inside just as the crypt door burst open behind them. The tunnel was pitch black. Rats scurried ahead of their footsteps. Hartwell carried a single candle stub, its flickering light barely enough to guide them through the twisting passage. Constance walked close, her breathing quick and shallow. After what felt like hours, they emerged into an abandoned carriage tunnel, its cobblestones slick with dripping water. Somewhere above, Boston's gas lamps flickered faintly, but down here the city was silent. Hartwell sank onto a broken crate, exhaustion pulling at his bones. He set the case down carefully, staring at it as if it were the last ember of a dying fire. Constance crouched beside him. You need to make more prints. Hide them where Theodore can't touch them. Only then will you be safe. Hartwell gave a bitter laugh. Safe? As long as I breathe, Theodore will hunt me. Her hand brushed his. Then let's make sure his hunt is useless. They made their way to Hartwell's studio by dawn, slipping through alleys to avoid Theodore's watchmen. The city was waking, carts rattling over cobblestones, horses steaming in the cold. To the world, Boston bustled with progress. But Hartwell knew the real Boston lived in shadows and blood. Inside his studio, Hartwell barred the door and lit his lamps. He set the fragile plate onto his workbench, his hands trembling. Constance stood silently by the window, her veil pulled low. The red glow of the darkroom filled the air as Hartwell began his work. He mixed the chemicals with practiced precision, dipped paper into developer trays, and held his breath as Cornelius Pemberton's terror-stricken face bloomed into view. One print, then another, each was a weapon sharper than any blade. Constance whispered, "When these spread, Theodore will be finished." Hartwell looked at her, suspicion still gnawing. "And what about you? Will you testify against your family?" Her lips trembled. "If it means ending their reign, yes." For the first time, Hartwell believed her. But belief came too late. The crash of breaking glass shattered the studio's quiet. Hartwell spun as the front window collapsed inward. Theodore's men poured in, pistols drawn. "Burn it all!" Theodore's voice thundered from the street. No trace left. Hartwell lunged for the prince, but Constance screamed, grabbing his arm. "The roof! Go!" They scrambled up the narrow staircase as flames licked across the floor. Smoke choked the air, stinging Hartwell's eyes. Behind them, the photographs curled in the heat, their images blackening. On the roof, icy wind hit them like knives. Below, Theodore stood watching, his face lit by firelight. He looked up and smiled. "It ends tonight, Hartwell." Hartwell clutched the case, the original plate still inside. His lungs burned, his hands blistered from heat. The flames roared higher, devouring the studio and years of his work. Constance's voice shook. "Jump to the next building." It was madness. The gap was wide, the drop fatal. But Hartwell knew it was the only chance. With the case held tight, he leapt. His boots slammed onto the opposite roof, the shock rattling his bones. He rolled hard, gasping, but alive. Constance followed, her skirts catching, tearing as she landed beside him. Together, they vanished into the smoke-filled night while Theodore's furious shouts echoed behind them. By morning, Hartwell's studio was ash. Nothing remained but charred wood and broken glass. But in his coat, wrapped in cloth, the plate survived. He and Constance fled Boston that very day, boarding a train bound for New York under false names. Hartwell carried the plate in a leather satchel strapped to his chest. It never left his sight. In the weeks that followed, copies of the photograph began to appear. Slipped under courthouse doors, mailed anonymously to newspapers, posted in taverns where dockworkers gathered. Each print carried the same truth: Cornelius Pemberton had not died peacefully. He had been murdered. Boston buzzed with scandal. The whispers grew too loud to silence. Judges convened, lawyers argued, newspapers demanded justice. Theodore Pemberton raged, but his empire cracked. One by one, his allies abandoned him. And then came the night when Theodore vanished, slipping into the fog of Boston Harbor. Some said he fled to Europe. Others whispered darker fates. His body was never found. Years later, Hartwell lived quietly in New York, still working as a photographer but never again taking memorial portraits. Constance visited often, her veil long discarded, her life remade far from Beacon Hill's shadow. On his deathbed, Hartwell kept the plate close, hidden in a carved wooden box. He never told where he buried it, only that it should never return to Boston. Because some secrets, once revealed, change a city forever. Call to action for YouTube. And that brings us to the end of Edgar Hartwell's terrifying journey into Boston's darkest secret. A family fortune built on blood, a photographer who captured the truth, and a city that nearly buried it. If you enjoyed this chilling historic horror story, make sure to subscribe, share this video with friends, and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Boston still has shadows, but tonight, you've walked through one of its darkest.